I never believed in clichés, but the day she walked into the classroom, every one of them suddenly felt true. Her name was Ms. Bennett, and she wasn't like the other teachers, strict, dull, or uninterested. She had that kind of presence that made you sit up straighter, your heartbeat skipping before you even realized why. Tall, confident, and with eyes that seemed to see too much, she carried herself like a secret wrapped in silk. I was 20 at the time, enrolled in an advanced literature class I'd barely managed to sign up for. And yet, that first week, books became the least of my distractions. Every time she leaned against the desk, the fabric of her blouse brushing her skin, every flick of her pen as she wrote across the board, it all ignited something inside me I had never dared put into words. What made it worse was the way she looked at me. Or maybe I just imagined it. When she called my name during roll, her lips curved into the faintest smile, as if she already knew I was the one who'd pay attention to more than her lessons. When her hand brushed mine while passing back a paper, it lingered a second too long, leaving warmth that refused to fade. It wasn't just attraction, it was danger. I knew the rules, student and teacher lines were not meant to blur. But desire doesn't follow rules. My journal filled with notes that weren't about novels but about her voice, her perfume, her little sighs when she thought no one was listening. One evening, after class, I stayed behind under the excuse of needing help with an assignment. The room was quiet, just the faint hum of the air conditioner. She leaned over my desk, close enough that I could smell her, something soft and intoxicating. "You're better at this than you think," she said, her tone low, her eyes locking on mine. And in that moment, I couldn't help but wonder if we were still talking about literature. The silence stretched, thick and charged. My pulse raced, every nerve alive, waiting, wanting. But then she pulled back with the kind of restraint that only made me crave more. "See you tomorrow," she said softly, gathering her papers. And just like that, she was gone, leaving me in a storm of need I didn't know how to calm. I walked out that night with the truth pressing against my ribs. Ms. Bennett wasn't just my teacher. She was temptation, and I was already falling. The days that followed felt like a dance of glances and stolen moments. In class, I tried to keep my eyes on the books, but my gaze always wandered to her hands tracing words in the margins, the way her hair slid over her shoulder, the subtle curve of her smile when she caught me staring. She noticed. Of course, she noticed. And instead of scolding me, she let it linger. Her eyes would lock with mine for seconds too long, as though she were daring me to hold the silence, to acknowledge the tension crackling between us. One afternoon, during a group discussion, I swore she brushed my shoulder on purpose as she passed. The touch was featherlight, accidental to anyone else, but it left heat blooming through my skin. When I looked up at her, she was already watching me with that secret smile, the kind that said she was aware of exactly what she was doing. The danger of it all thrilled me. Every time she leaned close to explain a passage, her breath ghosting near my ear, I felt my resolve slipping. The classroom became less about learning and more about waiting for those seconds of closeness, waiting for her eyes to tell me everything her lips could not. It was after a late seminar that the air between us thickened into something undeniable. Students trickled out until it was just the two of us, the room bathed in the golden hue of the setting sun. She was gathering her notes, and I lingered, my heart hammering as if urging me to stay. "You're quiet today," she said, glancing up at me. "Just distracted," I admitted, my voice softer than I intended. Her gaze softened, but her expression was unreadable. She stepped closer, her presence both terrifying and intoxicating. "By the class," she asked slowly, "or by something else?" My breath caught. The world outside that room disappeared, it was just her eyes burning into me, asking a question I was too afraid to answer out loud. My lips parted, but no words came, just a silence that said more than I ever could. She studied me for a moment that felt endless, then tucked a loose strand of hair behind her ear, a faint blush rising to her cheeks. "Careful," she whispered, almost too quiet to hear. "Some distractions are dangerous." And yet, the way she looked at me said she was already just as distracted. That night, lying awake, I couldn't stop replaying it, the warning in her words, the longing in her eyes. It was forbidden, reckless, and impossible. But it was also inevitable. Because I wasn't just her student anymore. I was her secret, waiting to be uncovered. It happened on a rainy Thursday. The kind of day where the campus was quiet, the sound of rain tapping against the windows filling the silence. Most students had left early, but I stayed behind under the excuse of needing help with an essay. Truthfully, I just wanted more of her, more of the stolen looks, the charged moments that left me dizzy. She was at her desk when I walked in, glasses perched on her nose, her pen moving gracefully across a stack of papers. When she glanced up and saw me, something flickered in her eyes, hesitation, maybe, or anticipation. "You again," she said lightly, setting her pen down. "Persistent, aren't you?" I smiled, my pulse racing. "Maybe I just like learning from you." Her lips curved, but her gaze sharpened. She motioned me closer, and I slid into the chair beside her desk. For a while, we talked about my paper, though I barely absorbed her words. All I could focus on was her hand, just inches from mine, her perfume wrapping around me like a secret spell. Then it happened. My hand brushed against hers. Accidental, at first. But neither of us pulled away. Instead, she let it linger, her fingers grazing mine softly, deliberately. The touch was electric, a spark that raced through my veins and left me breathless. My eyes darted to hers, and what I saw there made my chest tighten, hunger, restrained but undeniable. "This," she began, her voice low, "isn't wise." "I know," I whispered, though I made no move to pull away. For a moment, the world held its breath. And then, with a sigh that sounded like surrender, she let her hand slip fully into mine. Warm. Soft. Firm. It was such a simple thing, and yet it felt like stepping across an invisible line we could never return from. The rain outside grew heavier, as if echoing the pounding in my chest. She tightened her grip, her thumb brushing over my skin in slow, deliberate circles. I leaned closer without thinking, drawn to her like a flame to kindling. Her breath was shaky, her lips parted as though she wanted to speak but couldn't. "You don't know what you're asking for," she whispered. "Then show me," I murmured, the words escaping before I could stop them. Her eyes searched mine, and for a heartbeat, I thought she would pull away. But instead, she released my hand only to trace her fingers lightly across my wrist, up my arm, sending shivers with every inch. The touch was hesitant, forbidden, but it was also undeniable. When she finally stopped, her hand resting just at the edge of my shoulder, she closed her eyes and drew in a trembling breath. "You're going to ruin me," she said softly. But her hand didn't move. And neither did I. The air between us felt heavy, charged with something neither of us could control anymore. Her hand still lingered on my shoulder, her touch trembling with restraint. I could see the war playing out in her eyes, responsibility battling desire, rules colliding with need. I leaned in, close enough to hear the sharp inhale of her breath. "Why fight it?" I whispered, my voice barely audible above the rain outside. Her lips parted, her gaze darting between my eyes and my mouth. "Because it's wrong," she said, though the words lacked conviction. "But it feels right," I countered, and before she could argue, I closed the space between us. The first kiss was soft, almost tentative, as if we were both afraid the world might shatter around us. Her lips brushed mine like silk, sending a rush of warmth spiraling through me. For a moment, she froze, then melted into it, her hand sliding from my shoulder to the back of my neck, pulling me closer. The taste of her was intoxicating, sweet, forbidden, overwhelming. When the kiss deepened, her restraint slipped away like sand through her fingers. She kissed me harder, with a hunger that betrayed just how long she'd been holding herself back. I pressed against her, my fingers tangling in her hair, feeling the softness of each strand. She broke the kiss suddenly, her forehead resting against mine, her breath ragged. "This can't happen," she said, her voice trembling. "It already has," I whispered back, my lips brushing against hers. She let out a soft, almost helpless laugh before pulling me into her again. This time there was no hesitation, no careful restraint. It was raw, desperate, and consuming. Her hands roamed my arms, my waist, as though memorizing me with every touch. I felt the weight of what we were doing, the danger, the risk, the secrecy that would have to follow, but none of it mattered in that moment. All I cared about was the way she made me feel, wanted, alive, seen. When she finally pulled back, her cheeks were flushed, her chest rising and falling with every shaky breath. She looked at me like I was both her salvation and her downfall. "If anyone finds out," she began, but stopped herself. "No one will," I promised. Her hand cupped my cheek, her thumb brushing over my lips, still swollen from our kiss. "You don't know what you've done to me," she murmured. And I realized then that it wasn't just me who had been falling. She had fallen too, quietly, dangerously, against every rule she had sworn to keep. The bell tower outside chimed the late hour, breaking the spell. We pulled apart, the silence between us louder than any confession. She gathered her things quickly, her eyes refusing to meet mine. "Go home," she whispered, almost pleading. But as I left the room, my lips still tingling, I knew one thing for certain, there was no going back. We had crossed the line. After that night, nothing was the same. In class, we became actors, performing carefully for the world. I sat at my desk like any other student, my pen moving across paper while my eyes stole glances that no one else seemed to notice. She lectured with her usual calm authority, though I caught the flicker of heat in her gaze whenever it strayed to me. But between us, there was an unspoken understanding, something had shifted. It started small. A brush of her fingers when she handed me a book, a fleeting touch at the edge of my desk that could be dismissed as accidental. Yet every little moment carried weight, each one a reminder of what we had shared and what we were keeping hidden. Our first secret meeting happened by chance, or maybe by design. I stayed late after class, again with the excuse of help, though we both knew better. When the last student left, she locked the door, her eyes meeting mine in a silence that made my pulse race. "We shouldn't," she whispered, even as she stepped closer. "I know," I replied, already moving toward her. And then there was no space left between us. Her lips crashed against mine with the kind of urgency that only comes from denial finally breaking. I clung to her, every inch of me aching for her touch. Her hands gripped my waist, drawing me in, while mine roamed her back, memorizing the curve of her body. The kiss grew hotter, more desperate, until she broke away, pressing her forehead to mine, both of us gasping for air. "This is madness," she said, her breath trembling. "Then let's be mad," I whispered, and that was enough to pull her back into me. From that night on, the classroom became our sanctuary. When the halls were empty and the world wasn't watching, we gave in to what we had both been starving for. Sometimes it was just kisses stolen in the dim light, sometimes whispers shared in the quiet, promises neither of us dared say out loud. But it was never enough. The more we tasted of each other, the more we craved. The thrill of secrecy only made it burn hotter, the danger of being caught, the risk of discovery, the knowledge that no one could ever know. Outside those walls, she was Ms. Bennett, the composed teacher admired by her colleagues and respected by her students. But inside, with me, she was something else entirely, softer, hungrier, vulnerable in a way no one else had seen. And I loved it. I loved being her secret. Still, every secret carries weight. And with each stolen meeting, the weight of ours grew heavier, pressing down on us both. I should have been afraid. But I wasn't. I was addicted. It was never supposed to go further than kisses. That was what she told herself, what she whispered to me after every heated embrace. But desire doesn't listen to rules, and the fire we kept feeding was becoming uncontrollable. One Friday evening, I found myself in her office. The campus was quiet, most of the staff already gone for the weekend. I had come with the excuse of dropping off an essay, but when she opened the door and saw me standing there, something in her expression shifted. "You shouldn't be here," she said, though her voice was softer than her words. "Then tell me to leave," I challenged. She didn't. Instead, she stepped aside and let me in. The door clicked shut behind me, sealing us into a silence that buzzed with anticipation. Her desk was cluttered with papers, but her focus was entirely on me. I could feel her restraint unraveling, thread by thread. "I can't keep pretending," I admitted, my voice trembling. "Every time I see you, I want." I didn't finish, because she was already closing the distance. Her hands cupped my face, and then her lips were on mine, fierce and unyielding. This kiss wasn't soft or careful, it was raw, desperate, a surrender to everything we had been denying. She pressed me back against the desk, paper scattering to the floor. Her fingers threaded through my hair, her breath hot against my mouth as she whispered, "You're going to ruin me." "Then let me," I murmured, pulling her closer. Clothes weren't shed all at once, it was slower, tentative at first, as if each button undone, each sleeve slipped down, was another confession. Her hands trembled as they traced along my skin, and yet every touch was filled with hunger. I shivered beneath her fingertips, overwhelmed by the reality of her body against mine. The office light cast a golden glow over her, and for a moment I just stared, memorizing the sight of her, my teacher, my secret, the woman who had become my obsession. When she leaned down again, our kiss deepened into something fierce, something that tasted of both surrender and defiance. We moved together like two people starved, finally allowed to feast. Every sigh, every gasp, every whispered plea filled the small room until it felt like the walls themselves were holding our secret. It was reckless, dangerous, beautiful. And when it was over, we lay tangled together, our breaths uneven, our hearts still racing. She traced a finger down my arm, her expression soft but conflicted. "If anyone finds out," she whispered. "They won't," I promised, though I wasn't sure if I was convincing her or myself. For a long moment, she just looked at me, her eyes filled with both fear and something deeper, something dangerously close to love. That night, we didn't just cross a line. We erased it completely. The weekend after that night was a blur. I carried the memory of her everywhere, the taste of her lips, the heat of her touch, the way her body had pressed against mine with such desperate need. I was drunk on it, intoxicated by the danger and the intimacy we had shared. But reality always finds a way back in. When Monday came, the classroom felt different. She stood at the front as always, her posture flawless, her voice steady. To anyone else, she was simply Ms. Bennett, the respected teacher with sharp wit and endless patience. But to me, every glance was a reminder of what we had done, what we had become. And she knew it too. Her eyes avoided mine more than usual, her hands fidgeting with her papers as if they could keep her steady. The distance she put between us stung, though I understood. We had crossed the line in the most irreversible way. Still, even as she tried to play her part, cracks showed. When our eyes finally met across the room, the look she gave me was filled with both longing and regret. A silent message, we went too far. Later that week, she called me into her office. The door clicked shut, and for a moment, the air was suffocating with everything we couldn't say out loud. "We need to stop," she said firmly, though her voice shook. I swallowed hard. "Do you really want to?" Her silence was answer enough. She looked at me, her eyes glossy, her hands gripping the edge of her desk as though she needed the wood to anchor her. "Wanting and needing aren't the same," she whispered. The words cut deep, but I stepped closer anyway. "Then why does it feel like neither of us can let go?" Her breath caught as I brushed my fingers lightly over hers. She flinched at the contact, but didn't pull away. "Because it's not just desire anymore," she admitted softly, and my heart skipped. Her confession made my chest tighten with both joy and dread. Because desire was dangerous enough, but love? That could destroy us both. From then on, our meetings carried a sharper edge. Every kiss, every touch, every whispered word was tinged with the fear of discovery. A knock at the wrong moment, a careless look in public, any of it could unravel everything. But the risk only made us cling harder. We weren't just breaking rules anymore, we were building something fragile in the shadows, something that couldn't survive the light. And deep down, I knew the truth, every secret comes with a cost. It was only a matter of time before we'd be forced to pay it. The danger had always been there, lingering in the shadows like a predator waiting for its chance. We both knew it, but it was easy to ignore when it was just us, when the door was locked and the world outside couldn't see. Until the day it almost did. It was a late afternoon. I had slipped into her classroom after hours, my excuse the same as always, extra help. She sat beside me at the desk, her hand hidden under the table, resting against mine. The thrill of that small secret touch sent warmth rushing through me. "You're playing with fire," she murmured, though her thumb traced lazy circles over my palm. "Then let it burn," I whispered back, leaning closer. Her lips brushed mine in a fleeting kiss, soft and hungry at once. It was quick, barely a second, but it was enough to send sparks through me. And then the sound of footsteps in the hallway froze us both. She shot upright, pulling her hand away as if I'd burned her. The door handle rattled. My heart lurched into my throat. "Ms. Bennett?" a voice called. It was another teacher. Panic surged. I scrambled to gather my books, my pulse racing so fast I thought it might give us away. She was already on her feet, moving toward the door, her expression perfectly composed. When she opened it, her colleague peeked in, holding a stack of folders. I thought I saw the light on. "Working late again?" "Yes," she replied smoothly, her voice calm, betraying none of the storm raging beneath the surface. "Just grading." I kept my head down, pretending to busy myself with my notebook. My cheeks burned, terrified the woman might notice how flustered I was. Her colleague's gaze flicked to me. "And you?" I forced a small smile. "Essay help." The teacher nodded absently, handing Ms. Bennett the folders before leaving with a casual, "Don't work too hard." The door clicked shut. Silence crashed back down on us, heavy and suffocating. She leaned against the door, closing her eyes, exhaling a shaky breath. "That was too close," she whispered. I stood, my hands trembling, adrenaline still flooding my veins. But they didn't suspect anything. Her eyes snapped open, fire in them. "It doesn't take suspicion, it only takes one mistake. One slip." I swallowed, the weight of her words sinking in. But even then, I couldn't bring myself to regret it. I stepped closer, reaching for her hand again. "I don't care about the risk." She looked at me like I was both her greatest weakness and her only strength. Her lips pressed into a thin line, as if she wanted to argue, but instead, she pulled me into her arms. The embrace was fierce, desperate, her body trembling against mine. "You should care," she murmured into my hair. But I didn't. Because in that moment, I knew, no matter the risk, no matter the cost, I would never let her go. The near discovery changed everything. 4 days afterward, the tension between us grew heavier, sharper. Every glance in class felt like it carried too much weight. Every smile risked exposure. But no matter how much we tried to restrain ourselves, the pull was stronger. I found myself craving her more, not less. The risk didn't scare me, it fueled me. But for her, the fear cut deeper. I could see it in her eyes when she looked at me, that flicker of worry just beneath the longing. One evening, she called me into her office, her expression tight, her hands clasped too firmly together. "This has to end," she said before I could even sit down. The words sliced through me, but I forced myself to stay calm. "You don't mean that." Her lips pressed into a thin line. "I do. We've crossed too many lines. If anyone finds out, I'll lose everything, my job, my career, my reputation. And you don't deserve to be dragged into the wreckage of my mistakes." I stepped closer, shaking my head. "This isn't a mistake. What we have, it's real." Her eyes softened, pain flickering across her face. "That's what makes it so dangerous." I reached for her hand, and though she hesitated, she didn't pull away. "I don't care about the danger. I care about you." Her breath caught. For a long moment, the silence was unbearable. Then she cupped my cheek, her thumb brushing over my skin with heartbreaking tenderness. "You'll be the end of me," she whispered. And then she kissed me. Fiercely. Desperately. The kind of kiss that tasted like goodbye, even as it clung to hope. That night, we held each other as though the world could fall apart at any second. And maybe it already had. Because love, real, aching, forbidden love, has a way of consuming everything in its path. It doesn't care about rules, or careers, or futures. It only knows hunger. When dawn came, we parted quietly. She touched my face one last time, her eyes shining with a mixture of devotion and fear. "You'll always be my secret," she said softly. And then she turned away, leaving me with a heart too full to bear. Even now, I don't know if what we shared was a blessing or a curse. All I know is that she was my teacher, and I was her secret. A secret that changed everything. A secret I would carry forever. Because some loves aren't meant for the world to see. They're meant to be felt in whispers, remembered in shadows, and cherished in silence. And hers was the kind of love that would haunt me for the rest of my life.